Welcome to the Mind Wealth Podcast, and the episode today is about basing your future and your retirement on things that you cannot control. These are one of the things that we've talked about a whole bunch of times when we're discussing, people's finances and money and all that kind of stuff. It's something that Alan, talks about with every single client that he meets with, and helping them to figure out, well, where are you at? Where are you at with your money? Where are you at? Where are you going with your money? How far away are you from retirement? What are some of your goals? What does your life look like when you get to that point? But then, as you start to go through everything, as you start to talk about all these different ways that traditionally people are saving for their retirement and saving for their future, you start to realize that a whole bunch of your money ends up going to places that are not really in your control on how much money you can make from them. It's at the whim of a government. It's at the whim of the markets. It's the whim of technology. All these different things that you can't control. It's even at the whim of the weather and what might happen with climate change, or what might happen with the way that governments make choices. So why don't we just start with talking about a few of the things that we know that we don't really have control over? Who wants to start? Alan, how about you start?
Well, it's ironic that we talk about, a retirement plan or a financial plan. And the whole foundation of the business that we're in is based on that. They want everybody to get their certified financial planner designation and be able to do financial plans. However, if one looks at that fairly closely, they'll see some shortcomings to the actual education that's provided with it. There's very little discussion on cash flow planning and managing your cash flow. And there's very little discussion or education about how to deal with debt reduction or debt strategies. And it's like, well, that's kind of the foundation of what most people struggle with, is access to capital, cash flow, and managing their debt effectively. And so that's a big part that's missing. The average investment person out there, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a stockbroker or a mutual fund salesperson or a bank or an insurance person, they're trying to sell you something, sell you a product. How many of them are interested in finding out how your cash flow is working out? Or find out if you qualify for, what do you need to do to qualify for a mortgage to get a better interest rate on your mortgage? And I think that's the starting point where we realize there's a big part of what we do that's being overlooked by the entire industry for the most part. And I've learned over the years since 1984 that cash flow is the foundation of everything we should be concerned about. Get control of your cash flow first, and then design a plan to reduce or eliminate debt as soon as possible. And the bigger part of that is to reduce the amount of interest that we're giving the bankers. So don't chase the posted interest rates, but find out actually how much interest you're actually paying your lenders. That's the starting point, and I think that's a conversation that I spend a lot of time working with my clients with, that I don't believe is being addressed out there at all, and it should be the foundation of all financial management and retirement planning.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think it's important to remember that the entire game that's set up by the banks and the government is meant to keep your money in their hands and in their system and out of your own. And that it's so difficult. Well, I shouldn't say difficult. It's interesting because they want to make sure that they keep track and touch every dollar that passes through something and take a little slice of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to want to control your own money. You can't rely on something they're planning for you to make you money. You have to want to actually do that yourself.
So how do you make your money?
I have a business that I work hard at to provide a service that allows me to charge someone and make a profit at the end.
So my question is when you earn a good chunk of money and you're wondering, what should I do with it? What would the average advisor or investment person try to encourage you to do with your money?
I mean, every advisor or bank or anything, as soon as I make money in whatever I made it in, if I had a job, if I have a business or whatever, their guideline is to say, okay, whatever profits you've made, take what you need to live, and let's take the other money and give it to me, and I'll invest it and try and make you more money.
Right.
Where the thing that made it in the first place was me, and the best investment I could make is putting that money back into what made it in the first place.
Yeah.
So investing in my company, investing in myself, investing in my knowledge is going to 10x that money way quicker than someone else looking after my money is ever going to do that.
Oh yeah, you put your money into some fund, give it to a fund manager and let them deal with it. Then you're dealing with how intelligent they are with managing the money and what risks they take, and you're dealing with the stock markets that you don't have control over, and you're dealing with a whole bunch of middle people taking their cut from your profits, of them using your money to try and make money.
Yeah.
All these things are a whole bunch of things that you're not in control of. Just, obviously we're not in control of the stock market. There's a whole bunch of people that, have some good theories about how things go and the behaviors of the markets, and sometimes they can, buy and sell at the right times if that's what they do. If that's the time they're willing to invest doing it themselves, and taking out a whole bunch of those middle people so that there's no extra fees happening, no extra profits happening to other people in between. But then you got to like work on that stuff every day, or like maybe a little bit less, but still, it's still a pretty decent amount of time that you have to spend. So that becomes another job. You don't want really, like most people don't want another job. So I don't know. There's one thing. You can't control the stock market. Totally. What else can't you control? You can't control the value of the dollar. And this is the big thing that I want to talk about right now. This is something that Anthony just told me before we started recording. And I was like, this is nuts. So right now it's the middle of March of 2021. And in the last year, the value of our Canadian dollar has dropped 20%. That's Anthony had found that. Just found that out the other day. That was the number that had been told to us. That has dropped 20%. That means that if you had your money in investments and you didn't make 20% in the last year, you lost money. And you don't even know it.
It's important to maybe just back up a second, just clear up why that happened.
Totally.
So because of COVID and everything, they had to print a ton of money and send it out to everybody in the country for CERB and all these different things, programs and whatever. They created a ton more
created money.
Currency. They just add some zeros in the computer into the national debt, and poof, there you go. And then they send it out to everybody. So the more money they print, or the more money they create,
or borrow,
I shouldn't say money, currency.
The more currency they create, and then
it devalues your dollar. So if you had $100 last March 2020, and the same $100, if you had it in your pocket, and you 2021 this year, you had the same $100, it's only worth 80 in purchasing power, because they've devalued it $20 for every $100.
Yeah.
So,
or whatever you were going to buy for $100 back then costs $120 now. Right. Or whatever the math is 20% more.
But that's just the inflation.
Just inflation on the dollar. Now, nothing to do with anything else, with any other costs or anything else.
Right. Prices for everything have jumped. It's like skyrocket, like
and
a
it's
sheet
not
of
just
plywood.
Because of inflation.
Right.
It's because of a whole bunch of other reasons.
Yep.
Like you're saying, a sheet of plywood. What are the prices last year?
It was $32 for a sheet of 5/8 tongue groove, and it's $68 today.
Yeah. So just the cost of everything. The cost of everything has gone up. That's not 20%. That's 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So that's double the price. So 20% of that increase in that price has to do with devaluing the dollar. And that's the last episode that we talked about, was devaluing the dollar. if you want to go back and listen to that, that was almost an hour-long conversation of us talking about the ups and downs of that. But that's also, the price jump on that price of plywood has to do with a whole bunch of other factors that are all in the result of what's happening in our lives, what's happening in the world, all these things that we don't have control over. We don't have control over the pandemic, like personally. We don't have control over what the government decisions end up being. We don't have control over the weather. We don't have control over like a whole bunch of things. So there's all these factors that, maybe our lives don't feel like they're incredibly burdened right now. But they still are. There's still a whole bunch of factors that are happening right now that we don't have control over.
And it's important to remember. So the dollar lost 20%. So purchasing those sheets of plywood is an extra 20%. So if it went up 100, now you're at 120% because you add the 20% from what you would have paid for it last year and how much you could have bought.
Yeah.
So now the contractor that's building the house with that plywood, his material cost just went up 120% for the end person who's paying for it. So now he has to be a lot more competitive with his pricing.
And
so he can't add his regular 20% onto his material anymore. He has to add 10 because he's competing against a whole bunch of other people that are trying to get the bid because everybody needs to work.
Yeah.
And so not only did he lose 120% in the end user, the person owning the house at the end, they lost the 120%. I guess the 20% would have been also for the contractor as well.
Contractor, yeah, building,
but
yeah.
Now they're making way less money on the jobs they do in the material costs, where the material cost sometimes saves the job.
Yeah.
Depending on how
everyone makes a good wage for the hourly work that they were doing. Even the contractor, the person managing it, they make their own hourly wage, get to take it home, but then they need to make more profit on top of that to be a business. The business needs to make profit over and above the costs of everyone who works on the job. So yeah, now all of a sudden that amount of profit that they have is maybe less. Maybe nothing.
So the main thing is, previous years, inflation happens every year because they keep printing more money and there's no end to it in sight, and they'll do it till everything pops. But it's 2 to 4% typically every year with the amount of money that they create and print. But because of COVID and how much money they had to create because of the lockdowns and everything they put on, that created a much larger inflation over 12 months.
Yeah,
1 year.
20%.
Isn't that crazy?
20%. That's nuts.
Well, you think about the average family or the average business or a government and how much money they need per year to function. Okay, if any one of those are interrupted, like we had to shut down our office to the public from March until August.
Yeah.
Guess what? That affected our revenues. We were down 70%. 70%. Well, you take the average household and reduce their income by 70% and see how you do. If they got mortgage payments and they got financial obligations to pay, see how they make out. Or if they just lost their jobs altogether because the business that they worked for closed down, which has happened all over the place.
And they go on EI or they go on CERB and they get $2,000.
So they're drawing from a financial system that has to create the money from someplace. So they either borrow it, which is racking up debt, or they print it. But you look, I was through the Vancouver airport in mid-February. It was deserted. I don't know how many thousand people work in that airport. It was deserted. All those people aren't working. They can't be all on EI. How are they paying their bills? What are they doing? That's just one sector, the transportation sector at an airport.
Yep.
How many others are being affected as a spin-off from all those people who travel? Well, the taxi companies, the travel agents, all the destination places where people travel to.
Concerts
lockdown, we
and
can't
everything
travel.
that people travel for, right? Like entertainment.
So it's had a huge impact on the entire economy. So take away the ability for us to have an income, which all financial plans are based on. All of a sudden, everything just got thrown into a major muddle here now. It's chaos because you need income to finance any kind of a financial plan or meet your obligations or your debts or commitments. So take that out of the picture. Now Now you don't have the tax revenue that used to be produced as a result of you spending your money, whether it was on a product or a service, the things you bought. You don't have the money, so you're not spending the money, so the government's getting no revenue either from that whole population now that's been. So it's huge. This is a huge thing. I don't know why people don't understand how serious this is. It's not about COVID. This is the least of our concerns, is the disease. It's the economic fallout that's affected so many people's lives as a result of this. It's tragic what's going on. It's tragic. And sooner or later, people are going to wake up. That seems to be the word these days, being woke, woke up or wake up. But this is a significant impact on people's lives that's going to affect them for the rest of their life, including their retirement plan, by the way.
Yeah, you talk about long-term compounding effects. A lot of stuff that's happening right now is going to be long-term compounded. We don't even know the effects of it. Like we talked about this before, of all the extra effects that are going to happen from what's happening right now with people with depression, with people with kids getting, abused, and with people missing all of their cancer screenings, and people missing all of these extra conditions. There's a lot of conditions that people die from every year that are totally preventable, but if they are avoiding getting checkups, if the system can't even accept them because they're too busy dealing with the pandemic, then what option do these people have? They're going to die from something that was preventable. And so those numbers, we don't even know. We don't know where they're coming from or anything. So it's just, there is an exponential amount of things that are going to result from this that we don't even know.
So something I'd like to highlight too is, if you go back to, say you have a car loan and you're paying interest on it, right? And you had the car loan before the pandemic, right? You're still paying on it for 7 years or whatever. So you were going to pay, let's say, 7% or whatever these car loans are. Well, now it's 27% because your dollar that you're paying that car loan with, which was put into place beforehand, has an extra 20% of it doesn't buy as much, right? Because you need to make more money to be able to keep up with the inflation and how much the dollar
for all your expenses.
So
I don't know if it's not, it's like 20% more of 7%.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, Sorry.
To explain the math correctly.
Yeah.
But that's 20% more on top of this thing that you didn't even know was going to happen. It was supposed to be only 2 to 4% more on that 7% instead of 20% on the 7%.
And one other major thing to remember is, for every dollar that the government puts into existence from last year till now, let's say, every dollar that they created has to be paid back by future generations plus interest. So they already created the first dollar that they gave, and it has to be paid back plus interest. So how do you pay back the first dollar plus interest? You have to create more dollars to be able to pay it back plus interest. It's a never-ending cycle that does not work, and it will never work, has never worked, and it will always fail.
There's not enough dollars in existence to pay back the debt. There's not enough dollars in existence to meet payroll if everybody wanted cash for their paycheck every payday. There's not enough cash in existence to fulfill that. There'd be a run on the banks and you'd have a disaster. So it's important that this whole system keep running the way it is. Otherwise, there'll be a major collapse, and it'll affect everybody's life savings, everybody's values of their homes, everybody's. If nobody can afford to buy your house, all of a sudden, and our houses, our homes are often our biggest asset. We've got our most money tied up in our real estate, in our homes, and if you can't access it and you can't sell it because nobody can qualify to buy your house, where's your life savings? Where are you? And what are people doing?
And who has it?
Well, that's a good question.
The bank
Who
has
has
all
it?
the money.
The bank has your money.
They got the deed to your ranch.
And
right.
We talked about this the other day, where I brought it up, where I said it's a really uncomfortable feeling to think about selling our family house. But I said, in the coming months, from a financial perspective of securing our wealth, that would be the most prudent thing to do, is sell our house, take the money and take it out of the financial system and the banking system, and invest it in something that's undervalued, that we know is going to take off when things start turning the other direction. Mm-hmm. That's the smartest thing we could do. Yeah, we've been told a story to buy a house because it's the American dream. That's what they sold us. The banks created that to sell money to people because they needed vehicles to do that. And they thought, how can we give more money to people? Well, we need better vehicles. Everybody deserves to own a home. Everybody deserves to have an education. And it feels like a rock in my stomach thinking about having to sell the house and go and rent or find something way cheaper to pull out the equity to have it available to do something much greater, to take advantage of the wealth transfer that's going to happen and come right past us. And it's just it's been a mind bender for me that is an uncomfortable one, to say the least.
Well, what's undervalued? Where are you going to put that cash once you sell your house? That's the other dilemma. We had a whole chat here in January about cryptocurrency, and it's gone from $1,900 to $65,000 a Bitcoin in 1 year. And of course, the discussion and all the excitement is surrounding Bitcoin. Well, is 60,000 or 50,000 per Bitcoin too high priced, or is it a bargain? So are you investing in a business? No, it's definitely a speculation. It's definitely a gamble. You could make it and lose it quickly. So is that an appropriate place to be putting our money? And I have to say, from my perspective, only a small portion, because you would like to participate in a possible run-up, but I sure wouldn't want to put my life savings in there because I don't believe there's anything underneath it. It's not like you've got a house, a building as collateral, or you've got something that's solid like a block of gold. There's nothing backing it up except whatever somebody decides it's worth. And so I'm cautious about that with my life savings at my age as well. But that's where the talk is. That's the excitement. People are looking for the next place to put some of their money. They don't even have a foundation or an emergency plan on what they're currently doing, but they're looking at shooting the lights out with some type of cryptocurrency investment. And they haven't even got their debt under control, where they're paying 20% on a credit card. It's like people are doing everything the backwards way. Isn't it ironic that people find it very, very easy to diversify their debts? They got credit cards, they got lines of credit, they got mortgages, they got car loans, they got debt all over the place. Our job as a financial business is to help people get control, to unify their debt, get it in the lowest interest rate environment as possible, and then start getting serious about paying it down, rather than worrying about making 4% on your RSPs or your life savings and your future retirement that you have no control over most of the factors that contribute to it. It's like the whole thing is backwards. The whole thing is set up just the opposite of the way it should be. You talked about compound interest, the magic of compound interest. Yeah, it's one of the 8 wonders of the world. But guess what? When do you ever have enough money for that to actually amount to anything in your lifetime with your savings and your investments in your RSPs? You show me anybody that's making 6 or 8%, let alone 4%. As a long-term average annual rate of return. I'm hard-pressed to tell you I don't know of anybody. However, there's no problem looking at an average mortgage at 2-point-some% and recognizing that for the first 10 years you're paying in excess of 40% interest. Every year, 40% interest on your mortgage. It's compound interest, but it's reversed for the benefit of the banker.
Compounding is at the beginning.
So that brings up another interesting comment. Gee, wouldn't it be great to be the banker? They're getting compound interest front-end loaded out of the gate. So, in the Bible it talks about being a lender rather than a borrower. Well, why aren't we lending our money and putting it to work that way to make a lot higher interest on our hard-earned savings than actually giving it to somebody else and providing an income and a lifestyle for families all over the country looking after our little measly savings for us? It's quite a challenge, and most people are not aware at all of what we're up against and why it's so difficult to get ahead. They don't have a clue.
Yeah. Well, just going back to the crypto thing, I just wanted to mention it because of what's happening right now and what we said in our episode. We recorded the crypto episode back in January, and now it's March, the middle of March. And what happened since then was that Tesla actually went and bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin.
$1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion
of currency.
currency.
In
What we
Bitcoin.
said in that episode was, this is the problem with crypto, is that there's no control over it. You could have someone that just goes and buys a whole bunch and immediately increases the value of crypto because they went and bought that much. 1.5 billion or 1.2 billion?
1.5.
1.5. So Tesla putting the money into buying Bitcoin created the surge in the price of Bitcoin. It
But-
started it. There's someone else who went and put in another billion too. With that other guy that did it. He collected a whole bunch of things that he could get and put in another $1 billion into crypto. So
Do you know why they're doing it,
part of
though?
it. Why are they doing it?
Because they see how much money is being printed and how much the dollar is being devalued.
Yeah.
So they're taking their money out of the system,
Yeah.
the currency system, because the money sitting in a currency system is literally losing way more than you could possibly make.
Yeah.
And so right now, Bitcoin is at a $1 trillion market cap. It's the first non-regulated thing to get to a $1 trillion market cap.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really big thing. When you have companies like Tesla and stuff like that, bigger companies that all of a sudden make the jump and say, you know what, we're going to store some of our currency in Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, and gold and silver. They even had in their thing that they might buy some physical gold and silver to store it in as a hedge against inflation, because gold and silver is kept up with inflation, even though it's quite like it's undervalued and it's controlled by the banks and stuff like that. But it's important to recognize that as soon as places like that move money in, I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki 2 weeks ago talking about this very same thing with a very reputable like Bitcoin guy, and he was saying there's a wall of money coming into crypto because it's decentralized. It's just like the internet. You couldn't control the internet, so it took off, and you could make and do whatever you wanted with any regulation back in the day. Nobody, when you went in, like a salesman would come in and say, hey, let's put your business on the internet. And people would grab the Yellow Pages book and be like, why would I want to do that? Nobody's going to ever replace this. They'd throw the Yellow Pages book at him and be like, you think you're going to replace this? Yeah, good luck with that. I haven't seen a Yellow Pages book in 3 years. And every time I did, I got one in the mail, I threw it right in the recycling bin. Right? Like, this is the next internet. As much as we don't understand it fully, and like your comments, I can, from what I've learned now in the last month and a half, I can confidently say that it is going to be the future of economics, and it's going to have a big role in it. And the sooner we learn about it and understand it, because there's things from what you said, sounds like you don't understand it fully. I know there's no physical item.
Yeah, but when you're almost 70, you're a lot more reserved about where you want to put your money.
Of course.
And right now, it's still the freaking wild west out there. Like, you don't want to be just start gunslinging your money all over the place. I can see where he's coming from. Like,
But that should drive you to want to learn about it.
Well, yeah,
a lot.
but it's still
which I've been sending you videos and stuff, and you've been watching them.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy because it's more so to do with the fundamentals of how the system runs. There's a limited quantity. There's only 21 million Bitcoin ever going to be mined or created. So you got to think, the more money that moves into it, the higher the price is going to go, because there's only a limited amount, and the more money that comes in has to be divided by how many Bitcoin there were, and they can't print any more. So, yeah, it could go to $100,000 in the next year.
Well, I'm coming from the old school, and I understand what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to change my perspective of looking at this from a different perspective, because I'm still stuck. Because from my learning and what I still believe, anything of value that's created is by providing a product or a service that somebody is willing to provide and somebody's willing to buy or pay for. That's how you create wealth. all I see happening often in the stock market or even with crypto is money's changing hands. For somebody that's going to make 60 million, somebody had to lose that 60 million. There's no product being exchanged for that value outside of just somebody's going to win money and somebody's going to lose money. It's a net sum game where there's no other factors in there. If somebody's going to make it, somebody had to lose it. But there's no product and no business behind it that created real wealth in the first place. I mean, people can get rich, but we're not creating anything of wealth, of value that can be outside of just the value of the currency itself, the crypto, that can be passed on to generations. But there's no, I still don't see, I don't see wealth being created as a result of it. You can make somebody wealthy. That's a different thing. But it's, I find that still, I still struggle with that part of it, because really, most of us have a job or a business because we're providing a product or a service that somebody else needs, and we make a living at it. That's how we make a living, and that's how we create wealth, by growing, expanding the business, hiring more employees, putting people to work, expanding our product or service lines. That seems to be the foundation of what I understand how an economy works. Government can't provide everything, and we are moving in a direction right now that's socialist, communist thinking, where government provides everything. Well, they don't have any of their own money. Where do you think they're going to get their money from? Now they're talking about a guaranteed income for all families, a guaranteed income. Well, where's that money coming from? It's the people that are producing something of value, that's working for a living, paying taxes, that's providing that. And there's becoming less and less of them for more and more people on the receiving end who are quite content to sit home and receive this free money and not have to work for it or provide something of value to get it. So I have a real concern. I mean, it's a great idea. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We all get $24,000 a year, no questions asked, just make sure that, everybody's got a basic income to live off of. That's a wonderful concept. However, where does the money come from? That's the other issue. Where does the money come from?
Yeah.
So you got to kind of remember that Bitcoin is like the currency. Okay. So it's like our currency in our system. It's the same thing, but it's decentralized. So nobody controls it. Nobody can manipulate it. So right now ours can be controlled and manipulated in whatever direction they want, and they choose that some bureaucrat decides to do, and gets his cronies in on, and to benefit definitely them and the people underneath them.
Yeah.
So this way, there's no way for that to happen, right? A transaction doesn't have to go through a bank. It can go from me to you. And our accounts have no identification of Alan Johnson sent Tony Johnson 3 Bitcoin. It's a number to a number with there's no way to trace it. So what better way to transact with another person or another business that isn't being tracked at all?
So I think that what the thing about Bitcoin then is the product, the value in it is the way that it works.
Yes.
That's the game changer about it.
100%.
Is the way in which it works is the
value.
thing, because even though in the last couple of months we don't have control over it, but we still have way more control over where it goes and how.
We don't have control over the price.
Stuff.
We have control over how our money works and how we have complete control over our money in that system. We can do whatever we want with it.
Yeah, we don't have control over the value of it, but we have the control of it.
Right.
Whereas in the regular Canadian dollar economy, we do not. There's a lot less we have control over on that side of it. If you went to the bank today and you said, I would like $200,000, please, because I have that much room in my thing to accept that money, they would say, no. No, I'm sorry.
Is the max we can give
we
you.
cannot give you that. I'm sorry, no. You're like, oh, but I thought I had control. I thought it was my money. No, we have it, and we are not going to give it to you right now. But we can give you this much instead. Oh, so who's in control then?
So the other thing the next thing is you have Bitcoin and you have Ethereum. So Bitcoin is the basis for the money supply, and Ethereum is the internet of cryptocurrency. It's the platform that everything's going to be built off of and run on. It's where everything is going to develop from. And so it's important to know the difference there, because that's where businesses are going to create things like these new NFTs. Have you heard about that?
No.
So an NFT is part of this crypto thing now, where it's creating products where you can sell them yourself on as an NFT. So like if I was a producer and I created a song, and right now you have to go to like a production company that's going to license the song, right? And they're going to, do the and you're going to get a royalty from it. You're not going to own the song. They're going to own the song, and you get paid for the performance of it, right? Well, this way, you take control of everything back. You own the whole process. And okay, I only want this one. I'm only going to make one song, and I'm going to sell that one song as an NFT, and Alan's going to buy it from me because I have it for sale for $1,400, right? You bought it for me for $1,400 in, I guess, like crypto or Bitcoin or whatever, right? And so now Alan owns the song, right? Mm-hmm. And every time he sells it to someone else, even if he makes money on it, he could, because it maybe becomes a really popular song, right? And everybody loves it. Well, now Alan's going to sell the song to the next person, and every time it gets sold, I get a royalty from it, directly from the purchase. No matter how much you sold it for. Doesn't matter if you sold it for less or more, I still get a royalty every time it's bought and sold. And it becomes rare because there's only so many I released, or there's a whole different landscape that's coming that is going to change the way we think of everything, even on the internet. It's going to change the internet, period. Mm-hmm. It's going to radically change the way we see the world.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. We're slightly off topic though,
yes.
So let's get back to a few more practical things here about what we do have control over, because we were talking about all these different things that we do not have control over right now in our lives. Mm-hmm. And what do we do have control over? What can we leverage? What can we use in order to gain more control over our money, and then be able to do what we want with it?
Well, most people want more money.
Yeah.
They feel like they don't have enough money. And so from my perspective, they can go out and work more, take another job. They can work overtime. They can do their best to make more. Ironically, that's where they pay the highest amount of income tax on that extra hour of work as overtime. So they're taxed at their marginal tax rate, which is higher than what you would regularly earn on pay tax on that money. And so I look at, well, how can we keep more of what we earn? Well, what does that mean? Well, how do we pay less interest to the lenders? That's a starting point, because we know typically we pay a fair bit of interest to the bankers, to the lenders. How can I pay less income taxes? How can I reduce the cost of living by looking at what I pay for insurance? I mean, we have income insurance, we have mortgage insurance, we have health insurance, we have car insurance, go down the list. We buy insurance on everything that we have, including our health, critical illness, life insurance, mortgages, I mean, all of it. So can we reduce the cost of that? And then take that money, now what do we do with the newfound money? We didn't have to earn more money necessarily to find some. We can find some money with what we're doing differently, but then we need to put that to work. Where's the best place to put it? Well, maybe some of it can be crypto, but when you build a house or you're building anything, you start with a foundation. And I think a lot of people have skipped that part, and they jump right to finally finding some money, and the first thing they want to do is they want to speculate or risk and go for the high-flying stuff, because they think, well, it's going to take me forever to accumulate anything with the tried and true, which is what our whole industry is about, basically. Buy some mutual funds, buy some stocks, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, how's that all been working for everybody?
Or go spend it.
Or they'll spend it on lifestyle, which is more than they're earning, and that more often is the case.
Yeah. People
just spend the money. And that's good for the economy if they find extra money and they're spending it. But if they borrow and actually finance everything, then they're going right back into the same hole that they tried to climb out of. And so I think that's the real starting point for most people, just to realize. And then there's something that gets completely overlooked, which is investor behavior. What's our attitude towards money? What are our habits? What have we been doing to get into the situation we're currently in? And what are we going to do different going forward? This is about our personal behavior now. How many books are there out on that regarding managing money and your attitude towards it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not being hardly addressed by anybody. Fortunately, I run into a person where I took my cash flow course, and part of it, she wrote a book called Spent. It's investor behavior. What motivates people to spend money and save money and all the different things that motivates it. Bless you.
Excuse me.
We need to find out for everybody what drives them, what makes them want to do anything different than what they're currently doing. If they can't be bothered, save yourself the effort for sure.
So let's roll it right back to, how does somebody accomplish that? And I believe that all of everything that you just said, especially like getting control of your own money and realizing what that is and whatever, it doesn't even come down to going to see someone like you first. It comes down to them deciding they need to do something about it, and they need to learn how to do it. And they need to find some people that can help them do it and set that up for them and clarify what is wrong and how to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes to a choice that they have to make first.
Right. Yeah.
That is, I'm not doing well. I need to change something. How do I go and do this?
That's the first part, and it's very uncomfortable
Yes.
to sit there and actually look at where you're at and know that I'm not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hard part.
Yep.
There's this tool that I've used multiple times now called the fact map that a group that I'm in has created, and I've worked through the fact map, and it helps you to realize where you're really at.
Where you've
These
been,
are your facts.
where you are today, and where you want to go.
Yes, these are all the problems that you are facing right now. This fact map has a bunch of different categories that it asks you questions in. The one is in business or in your finances, in your personal finances. And there's a whole bunch of questions that are very uncomfortable questions. How much debt do you have? How much interest are you paying monthly on that debt? How long would it take you to pay off that debt based on the income that you have right now? All of these different things. There's a whole bunch of questions that you really need to ask yourself, and you need to actually write all of them down and figure it out. Add up all your credit cards and just see how much room you have on your credit cards. I actually did this a little while ago, and I was like, well, between my business credit cards and my personal credit cards, I have over $100,000 worth of room on credit cards. And I was like, I can't believe that I have that much. It's kind of nuts to think about that.
And that money wasn't even created by the government. It was created by the bank when they made the
bank.
credit card.
Yeah, when they gave me the credit, when they assigned that to me. Now, I don't have anything on any of those credit cards right now. That's a really great fact that I have on my fact map, that I don't have anything on those credit cards aside from what I spent last month that I'm going to pay off this month. So that's pretty phenomenal. That's a really good factor on my fact map. But everyone needs to get to the point where they know what all those numbers are. And when you get to those numbers, a whole bunch of you are going to feel sick to your stomach about where you actually are at.
Been there.
But as soon as you do that, then you're going to realize that you need to make these changes, that you need to consolidate things, you need to unify things, you need to figure out a way to make more money, you need to figure out a way to save more money. You need to adjust your lifestyle and think about the things that you're spending your money on that is completely being wasted. Like, you don't need to buy an $80 bottle of wine. You can buy a $20 bottle of wine and still enjoy it.
And it's only for a time period.
And it's only for a time. It's not like this is forever. But you do need to figure that out. Now, we're going to have a whole other episode about debt and why you need to attack it first. We kind of already talked about that a lot of other times, but I think that we should dedicate a whole episode on that as well. But go ahead.
I wanted to mention some of the feedback we got from one or two people regarding some of our previous podcasts was, gee, they're so negative.
Yeah.
They're so negative. You're talking about, all you're talking about is all the problems.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? You had an answer to that. It has to do with, if you don't identify what the problems are, nobody's going to be interested in a solution or doing anything different.
Yeah.
So you have to talk about what's wrong with what we're doing.
We do.
And-
We have to make it hurt
Yeah.
for you so that you realize that you are hurting and it needs to be fixed.
And there is solutions.
Yeah, and you
There
don't need to
is
just
solutions.
put a Band-Aid on top. Like there's an entire chiropractic and physiotherapy fixing that needs to go through in order for you to fix this chronic problem that you have. And almost everyone has it. You know, if you're sitting there pretty and you have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in your bank account and you don't have any debt and all that stuff, why are you listening to our podcast?
Yeah, well, no, we want to talk to you. Come in here and let's figure out what you did to get there.
Come on in. We'll interview
And
you.
we'll
Absolutely.
interview you and would love to know and for you to share how you got there, and if you've created wealth or if you've just got rich really quick with some investment and been able to pay everything off.
So that's the thing. I'm sorry to tell people that we sound negative, but we do need to make it hurt so that you realize that you can do so much better. Like that's the thing that gets us excited, is to help people realize that you can do so much better if you just stop thinking the way that general banking and society wants you to think. Because the majority of the way, if they can keep you thinking the way you're currently thinking, then they can keep making more money off of you instead of you retaining more of that wealth yourself.
Something I learned 25 years ago. If you continue to think the way you've always thought, you'll continue to get what you've always got. You decide if you want to do something different than what you've been currently doing. Like that's really the bottom line. And the other part of it is you don't know what you don't know. Can you be bothered to find out? If you don't have an interest, but you want somebody else to teach you and show you, that's when you search out someone who's skilled in the area that you're looking at. You're not going to find that in the general marketplace. There's very few people out there doing that. There's people doing bankruptcy solutions. They'll help you bail out of a financial burden. They'll help you with cash flow by maybe renegotiating with lenders to reduce the amount of money you're paying them. But I mean, who's doing cash flow plans out there, which should be the foundation of all financial management? Who's doing them? So I think we got to identify. Well, it took me 25 years to discover what it is that we've been doing wrong, and also just in the last 8 years to find out what I can do instead, to have an alternative to what we've been doing. I wasn't aware of it either. And it's taken me 25 years. And if the average guy coming off the street thinks, I'm going to be a do-it-yourselfer, I'm going to do this all on my own. Well, it took me 25 years to get where I'm at. It's going to be a slow growth. Even if you're passionate about it, it's going to take a while.
Even if you're passionate, even if you do find the right places to learn the right things and do the right things, it still will take a considerable amount of time.
It's going to take daily, weekly commitment because things are changing so fast that you have to stay relevant.
Yeah, you can't read a book from 10 years ago that might have some really great advice that really was perfect 10 years ago and is definitely not now. So anyways, I think that will end up this episode for now. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ciao.
If you like this episode, you're going to love our free online workshop that explains the concept and many others in more detail. The True Wealth Workshop will give you the tools to get out of debt quicker, get your finances in order the right way. Sign up for the free online workshop at mycustombank.com.